Hello, welcome to Blogging for Programmers. Today I want to talk about finding some way to get your attention and working in a way that you want to work. When you start to write, there's a lot of things you have to do, right? To get yourself to do this. Because if you're not making money at this, you're doing this on your own volition, for your own career, it gets hard because you're sitting there going, there's a football game on. There's a Christmas tree over there. There's so many different things pulling you away. So why do you focus? How do you focus at work? But focusing at work is a little bit easier because you have to do it, right? If your job is to work on some things during these hours, it's a lot easier to make yourself do that than it is when you have just gotten done with that. I find that there's a couple of parts to this that you need to really think about. One is time. So what time do you write? I know people who write in the morning. I know some people who write at night. I did all my writing in the early days. After everyone, went to bed, I would get back and write. I would have 2-3 hours after that. Didn't get a lot of sleep. It's not really great for you. I don't suggest you do that for 15-20 hours a week, but sometimes you have to do that. So you find the time whenever you can, but find a pattern, find a rhythm that works for you. And then find a place. Do you go outdoors? Do you stay indoors? Do you stay at the desk you work at home all day? Do you have a different desk? Do you have a back porch desk, a dining room desk, or something like that? Do you go to a coffee shop? I like to work in coffee shops when I'm writing. I used to do it a lot more when I was writing, for a living. It was a good way to get out, change of scenery, and just have a nice little cup of coffee and get away from things. And sometimes it's weird. I actually have written in a theme park as well for this very reason. Sometimes noise is bad. Sometimes, and it's really not just noise, it's too little noise or too much noise. Too little noise sometimes can either mean it's too silent, too quiet, or it means that it's quiet, but then there's something in the background, and a kid or a piece of equipment or something that's making a noise. It's not necessarily a bad noise. Kids aren't necessarily bad noises at all times at the very least, but sometimes they're just distracting. And anything that distracts you is bad. And when I say a theme park, I've written it at Epcot quite a few times. For the last 2 years, I would actually go to Epcot on a few days every year in early January, and it would be my writing time. And I would sit there and I would focus. And you think, oh, you can't focus when you're at Disney World. I actually found I could focus more because, one, I was in a special place, and two, I really had to prove that I had done something. If not to the people I was working for, certainly for myself, because I didn't want it to just look like I had taken a couple of days and, I'm pretending to work and I'm going to ride rides. No, I actually sat out in the park benches and I would write, and I would work like 4 or 5 hours a day for 3 days. And I wouldn't call it the whole day. I would just, I call it a half day, whichever day it was, depending on the weather. Sometimes the weather's bad and it actually worked out really well. But the noise, a nice steady noise is like white noise. So people talking that you can't hear or understand, which gets easier as you get older and your ears start going crazy. But, you don't hear people say things, but you feel the emotion around you and the sounds. That sounds kind of trippy, I suppose, but that's just the way it is for me. Outdoors is good. I don't mind being outdoors. Outdoors has, problems with pollen and leaves hitting you and, rain happening. I don't like silence. I do like music. I have different ideas about what music. I wrote an article about this on SQL Server Central a while back about what music I like. And I usually will pick like a long form, full audio if I'm doing some big task and I want to do it and want to finish. And there's just something about listening to like Jethro Tull's Passion Play or Thick as a Brick, Dark Side of the Moon, Abbey Road, any kind of concept album where Moody Blues is pretty good too. So any kind of concept album worked for me. You pick your own, whatever works for you. I don't usually use TV. I can use sports on TV because you don't have to watch sports. The only sport I've found I cannot do this very well with is soccer, because soccer has too much. It's the weirdest thing. They only have these, like, they score once or twice a game, sometimes not at all. But you got to keep watching because they don't stop. And there always is this chance that you'll miss something. And if you start working on something else, you'll notice, then somebody scores and you're like, what happened? I didn't see that. And part of the excitement of soccer is that they do only score so little that when you want to see it, you want to see it. But like football, it's great. There's only a few big plays and you can usually hear the cheers. They do a pretty good job of cueing you in when something big is going to happen. So that's how I work. I do my best to focus when when I get to that point where I have to write something, and I just crunch it out. And then there's sometimes when it's like, if I've already written the code, I've talked about this, write your code and then fill in the blanks. That I can fill in the blanks. I can say, this is what this is, and this is what this is. If you're trying to get some writing done, figure out what works for you, figure out the rhythms that make you happy, and get out there and write. All right. That's today's tip. Thank you very much.